Hello and welcome to Frankly Keto. I'm Frank Alvarez. I am the owner of Frankly Nutritious, and this is going to be class one of the Frankly Keto. This is the disclaimer. You guys all got this as a document that you were to sign and get back to me. If you haven't done that, please sign it, scan it, take a picture of it, get it back to me as soon as you can. Worst case, at least respond to the email that I sent you saying that you agree with all the documents that I did send you, and then follow up with the rest of those if you could, please. But this is just to tell you that this isn't medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not treating or diagnosing you with anything. This is just an educational class that you so decided to take for your educational purposes. And anything that you will do, you would consult a medical professional and your healthcare team to make sure it's appropriate for you and so on. So class outlines. What we're going to go through in the next 5 weeks is we're going to go through 5 weeks of how to do keto, A to Z, or low carb. I'll be using those terms interchangeably and defining a little bit more specifically what those things might mean. In certain situations, they might have to be delineated, the differentiation between those a little bit more. But today we're going to talk about getting started, just a little bit of history, the food basics, what ketosis is, the side effects, and then it's just some food basics for ketosis and just some food basics in general. Next week we'll talk on becoming a fat burner, what ketones are, how to measure them, what the numbers really mean, and how to know if you're in ketosis or not. Then class 3, making the change easy. So we'll talk about a fridge and pantry cleanse that you can do and how to do it, what real foods are, where to buy them, traveling, eating out, and then I will show you my pantry and what I do and the things that I use to help me do this. Class 4 is moving forward, so bulletproofing yourself, keto tips and tricks, and staying on track. So, how you can do this when you eat out, how you do this when you're over the holidays with your family, and the people that you surround yourself with too to help yourself with this, which you have a whole community right here in this class that can help you do that. Then the last part will be on exercise, which is going to be sprinkled throughout the whole thing too. But we'll get more into the specifics of, there's some myths around the fact that you can't build muscle on a low carb diet, and then endurance things that you're not very efficient at that, or it's not the best way to do it, and stuff like that. But we'll talk on that, and there's some myths and some truths out there, just so you know what the differences of them are. So again, this is going to be class 1, getting started. So a little bit more about me. My name is Frank Alvarez. I live in the Milwaukee area. If you're not local here with me and you don't know who I am, got my degree in bacteriology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, was going to go to med school, and decided to fly airplanes. So there you see the airplane on the top right. And I flew airplanes for the Air Force for 25 years. And along the way, I was a pro athlete. I was a pro duathlete, triathlete, adventure racer. And I also was into the nutrition and the health aspects, and I like tinkering with my body in a healthful way. Not I'm doing things that were bad for my body, like steroids and things like that. But especially with the nutrition and the fitness things. And then also during the last along that journey, also I got my master's in holistic nutrition. And I got a bunch of other certifications. I'm a powerlifting coach, a personal trainer, a holistic life coach, a certified sports nutrition advisor, and quite a few other things. So just stuff that I did because I was interested in it. And that's how I came to this program and wanted to educate you guys. So Lost in Space, how did we get here? Now we are lost in space, but today I'm going to help you guys find your way back. Lost in Space aired back in 1967. It's about the time Ancel Keys, about 10 years prior to that he came up with the fat hypothesis, and that's what really put us out there as far as fat being bad and carbs being the end-all be-all as far as our health goes. And so who was Ancel Keys? So he came up with the fat hypothesis, and he got this from observing some people in southern Italy, which had the highest concentration of centurions in the world. And he hypothesized that the Mediterranean-style diet, which was low in animal fat, protected against heart disease, and that a diet high in animal fats led to heart disease. The results of which later became known as the 7-country study appeared to show that the serum cholesterol was strongly related to coronary heart disease, mortality, both at a population and individual levels. So he looked at these 7 countries, but it was really like 27 or 28 countries that the data came from. And he just handpicked the 7 that actually conformed to what he believed, or whatever influences he had. That's a completely different talk and argument about that. So that's where it all came from. And it coincided pretty close with Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was president at the time, and he had a heart attack. And this was all tied to that, and off it went, and down the road for the next 70 years of fat is bad and carbs are good became the norm. But as always with the bad guy, there's a good guy. And this is a British physiologist, John Yudkin. He disagreed. He named sugar, especially fructose, as the cause of heart disease, as well as cavities, obesity, liver disease, and some other forms of cancer. Suffice it to say, Yudkin was ridiculed, and his career was pretty much ruined for this stance. But he's finally now being recognized for having the correct theory. We're not going to go into that here either, but just some background on it, that there was somebody who had it right, and that was 60 plus years ago, 70 years ago, and all the things that we're going to talk about, and probably why you're here, because you're hearing about the health benefits of this dietary approach, that the health concerns that we have now that are just rampant could have been avoided if we just would have listened to reason and Yudkin. So what does this mean to us? So here's a chart of the U.S. obesity prevalence from 1960 to 2009, and you can see with my cursor on here that here you get prevalence. This is just years, and then on the bottom you got time as it goes by, and then our blue line up here is obese, so greater than 30, and then very obese down here in red. You can see right around 1975, 1976, towards 1980, right in there is where things started to change. We had these drastic changes. And now I want to also clarify too that, because this is a problem and a pet peeve with most people who know what they're talking about when they look at science, of having things that correlate or things that are causing things. This is not a cause just because the obesity occurred about this time, and it also happens to be the time that our refined carbohydrate consumption started going through the roof. Refined food in general, right around 1976, 77, into the 80s. And this is when I was a teenager. So I was born in 65. I was 15 years old when all this stuff started to really hit. And then 3 years later, I'm on my own, becoming an adult and in the thick of it, and deciding and figuring out how I'm going to lead my life. And I get stuck in this same thing like most people did during that time. So you can see what happened here. And it's a very, very strong correlation, to say the least. So with that being said, fats don't make us fat, carbs do. People get worried about eating high fat because they think it's going to kill us for cholesterol and heart reasons, but they also think it's going to make us fat. But there's a guy, Dr. Robert Wolfe. He's one of the foremost authorities on metabolism. In his lab, conducted a study where fat was infused into subjects into their blood directly itself. And the result was that this fat alone was used as energy, and none of the early signs of obesity were seen in these studies, or in these people. But then later in the study, these same subjects had fat and carbohydrates injected into their system. And what was found, interestingly, is that this time the fat was not utilized as energy, neither were the carbs, and they were actually, the utilization of both fat and carbs was impaired. So this clearly showed that fat alone is not making us fat. It's the combo of fat and carbs. Carbohydrates convert into triglycerides because insulin's around. We'll get into more of that, but that's where your whole triglycerides, which everybody knows are bad, and why your numbers go up, and they go up and they skyrocket because of the carbohydrates. They're refined, processed carbohydrates. So not the broccoli and the carrots and things, but the rice, the flours, the pastas, and things like that. So what they found in this is that the general result is body fat loss improves glucose and insulin sensitivity and cholesterol levels if you get the insulin low by getting the carbs low and getting the fat high. So what about cholesterol? So this is another biggie. It's not dietary cholesterol that's causing heart disease whatsoever. What it is there are things that cause, if you look over here on the left, you'll see that this picture is depicting that your artery here has got cracks in it. And what happens here naturally is that your body produces cholesterol. It's a natural biochemical process. And your LDL brings in cholesterol to repair the damage. And there's other things that go on. And then HDL carries that bad, oxidized, now ruined cholesterol out to be processed and revamped or exited out of the body. But what causes these cracks is the thing of concern, and it's not fat, it's not cholesterol. The cholesterol has to be there. And what causes these cracks are sugar, viruses, stress, things like that. So all the common stuff that you think of, but it's the carbohydrates are a big piece of that. So the sugar. So a lot of when I'm talking sugar, I'm also talking about the refined carbohydrates that convert to sugar as soon as you eat them. So that bagel that you think is all great for you is really just turning to sugar in your stomach. So anyway, so what happens, when you hear about these lesions and blockages is that you'll get more cracks, you bring in more cholesterol, it gets oxidized, it gets ruined by oxygen and things like that because of the stress, the sugar, and things like that. And that causes that blockage and that lesion, so to say, is what they call it. And then that's where it can block, it can break off and go into another artery and block it, or it can go off into your brain and it can cause a brain stroke. So it's not dietary cholesterol. That's pretty much been proven. A really good book is The Great Cholesterol Myth by Sinatra and Bowden. So Johnny Bowden and Sinatra. Sinatra is a cardiologist. He's an MD. Really, really good read. It's easy. It's chocked full of science. So you can at least see that there is a lot of science out there promoting this. Good book to show to your docs too, if and when they start to question what you're doing because your blood work might be questionable in their eyes. So again, what does this all mean to us? Okay, so this is a principle from a mentor of mine. It's called the Costanza Principle. You guys know George Costanza. And there's the episode where he decides to do the opposite of what George thinks George should do because and he thinks his life will go better, his luck will get better because pretty much anything George does is not the right decision. And his friends, Jerry and Elaine and Kramer, all think that, yeah, that's probably a good technique, and it works. He gets the girlfriend, he gets the job with the Yankees, and he gets the supermodel, and he gets promoted with the Yankees. It goes through the roof. So this principle was coined by my friend and mentor Corey Holly, who's a naturopathic doctor, for a reason, because if you do the opposite of what convention thinks you should do for your health, you're going to be healthier for it 99.9% of the time. So that's what some of the stuff with the cardiovascular disease and the high carbs and low fat, do the opposite of those things, and you're going to be better off for it. And we'll prove that to an extent here in this course. So we're going to go through a little bit on the food, just so you know a little bit of background on and refresh your memory from your middle school biology and things. So macronutrients. Macronutrients are the big pieces. So macro means big. So these are protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And then the other piece of it are micronutrients, which we won't really touch on here too much, but those are micro, those are small, so those are your vitamins, your minerals, and things like that. So with this part, whenever I talk of macronutrients or food in general, when I'm talking about fat, I'm not talking about McDonald's, Culver's, Burger King, fast food, fried, or even just when you go out to a restaurant and they're cooking in soybean oil and corn oils and things like that. I'm talking about good fats. So you got avocados and coconuts and things in here you see in the picture. So everything's always good. Protein, same thing. We're looking at grass-fed animals. You can get a lot of that stuff just in a Pick and Save now. You can find grass-fed meats. Those meats are good for you, and the saturated fat or the fats in them aren't bad for you. But the purpose of what I want to go through here is that we're going to go through protein, carbohydrates, and fat, and we're going to talk, and I want you guys to kind of vote in your head if you think if one of these, or the one that we're talking about, if it's essential or if it's not essential. And what essential means is that we as humans need it or we will die. And then it also means that we have to go to our environment to get it, parts of it. So we have to go to our environment and get it because we can't make it. And if we don't get it, we will die. There's a disease, a life-threatening disease or processes that will occur, and we will cease to exist. So first one, protein. So all these here. So do you guys think it's essential or non-essential? Well, proteins are essential. Hopefully that's what you were thinking. But most people don't really know. This is not something that you guys ever really had thought about. So if you get it wrong, don't sweat it. But this is usually about a 50-50 if people realize that protein, that we do need it. Most people realize that we do. You do need it for your brain, your neurotransmitters and stuff. So you want to get free range eggs, grass-fed. When you get nuts and seeds, you want to try and make sure they're not getting exposed to air and oxygen as much as possible. Z naturals, so the letter Z as in Zulu, and then naturals, food, or Z natural foods. So Z natural with no S, and then foods. And I think it's .org or .com. Just Google Z natural. It'll be in the show, the class notes that I'll give you guys. But really good place to buy nuts and seeds. They do the right things, they package them right, and they show up at your doorstep. Um, it, well preserved, I should say, so that the oils in them aren't ruined and rancid. So protein, you need it. It's essential. There's certain amino acids that you have to get, or you will die. If you're a vegetarian, this is nothing against vegetarians, but if you are a vegetarian, you need to understand what amino acids are. And just real quick, what they are is proteins are made up of amino acids, and some of them are essential, which means that we can't make them. We have to go get them from our diet. So you have to make sure, if you're a vegetarian, that you are crossing over vegetables and your rice and your beans and things like that to make sure that you get all of the full complement of essential amino acids so you don't lack in them and run into trouble. So it's really difficult to do. Nothing wrong with doing it. It's just really difficult, and you need to understand that concept. And amazingly, a lot of people, when I do talks, don't understand that. When I ask them if they know what amino acids are, and they just shake their head no. And I'm just amazed that they're living a vegetarian lifestyle and they don't know that. They need to know that. Okay, so carbs, essential or not essential? And they are not essential. So contrary to how we've been taught and what the government and the USDA tells us what we're supposed to eat, and we're up in the 60, 70, 80% range for carbs, but we don't need them. We do not need a single carbohydrate. There is not a carbohydrate deficiency disease that humans suffer from. There is none. Our brain does need a little bit of glucose, which is our carbohydrates, so a sugar, but we can convert protein into that little bit of sugar that we need. So we do not need carbohydrates in any way, shape, or form. So this is the concept, is a big part of the focus of this course, and why the ketogenic is really, really effective for humans. Okay, so fat, essential or not essential? Fats are, as you probably are going to guess because you're here, and the course is about fats for the most part, is that they are essential. There are essential fats that we need to get, and it's cholesterol, which leads into all your sex hormones. Your cell walls are made, every cell wall in your body is made up of phospholipids. So lipids are fat, so it's like a double-lined fence, and that's the inside and the outside, and there's all kinds of these fats are what build that fence, and that's how you communicate. It's how your cells communicate inside and outside of the cell. And the obvious thing is that your brain is upwards of 60-65% fat. If you're not taking in good fat or any fats, you're not repairing your brain, because we can't create them. Okay, so this is what we've been told, unfortunately. So we've had the food pyramid. Now we have my plate, and it's very heavy in grains and fruits. And fruits we got to be careful with. So when people, back to that Costanza principle, when people decide to get healthy, they decide they're gonna eat fruits and vegetables. But what they really do is they eat fruits. So you got to be careful with the fruits you eat. You got to be careful the juices that you drink, because even if you're squeezing perfectly awesome, great oranges, the orange itself isn't all that bad for you. It does have quite a bit of sugar, and it has a lot of really good stuff in it for you. But when you squeeze 4 or 5, 6 oranges into an 8-ounce glass and you slam it, that's a ton of sugar you just put in. If you tried to eat those 5 or 6 oranges with all the pulp, with all the fiber and the body of the orange, it would be tough to do. It'd be a lot that you're eating, which makes sense. That's why you don't eat that many. So you got to be careful with juices and things. If you're a juicer, I don't do it a whole lot, but I always have juiced. You just got to be careful with it and realize it. And also another aspect too is to realize it also with little kids. So if you have a 30-pounder and you're giving them a banana that's 8-10 inches long, you might think that maybe I should just give them a third of that banana, because that's like us eating 3 of them. So it's quite a bit, and it's quite a bit of sugar. So then you got the grains, and protein, where they tell you to eat lean and things. So but this is what the culprit really is in our health. And so how do we deal with this? So what's going on is the real culprit is insulin. So carbohydrates, again, and insulin, that's where insulin gets driven from. So you eat carbohydrates and you break those down into glucose, and because you have glucose in your blood, your pancreas produces insulin, and insulin shows up into your bloodstream, and it drives that glucose into your muscles, into your tissues. And if it has too much and it can't put it all in your muscles, it stores it directly as fat in your fat cells. So insulin is the fat storage hormone. Or if you're insulin resistant, so your muscles are resistant to insulin, the effects of it, now what it's going to do, it's just going to take all that glucose and store it as fat. And we need insulin, hence the type 1 diabetes have to take it because they don't produce it, so they have to inject it. It's a lifesaver for them. So they have to, but because glucose is very toxic to us, so your body needs to deal with it. We need it, but we don't need it. But it's around. It's just part of your biochemistry, and insulin deals with it. But this is what's going on: is that if we start here in the red, the high carb, sugary diets, you get frequent eating because you have cravings like crazy, and sedentary living. You turn in and you gain weight, and that's not what this girl's genes are expressing for her to look like. And her insulin's high, so she's in a fat storage mode because she's got insulin around all the time. And then if she comes around here, if she starts eating lower carb, gets that under control, she does some intermittent fasting, which we'll talk more on that in class 3 or 4. But what you're doing with a ketogenic diet to get yourself into ketosis is that you're mimicking what fasting does, because you fast and you deplete your carbohydrate stores, and then you force your body to start using a natural biochemical pathway that you have to break down fat into ketones, hence the ketogenic diet, or low carb diets. But you do these things: low carb, intermittent fasting, exercise, and you get your insulin low, you get it under control. And the side effect with the health benefits we'll talk about, but one of the big side effects is that you're going to lose weight. So sugar, all kinds of hidden sugars. These are a bunch of 56 names of sugar. So the cane sugar, the corn syrup, the brown sugar, beet sugar, those kind of things. But do you know what galactose is? Do you know what mannitol is? Do you know what treacle is, and things like that? Some of these are pretty, malts. They're pretty obvious what they are, but anything with an OSE on it. So glucose, sucrose, maltose, galactose, those are all sugars. And you got to watch out for them in labels and things. But there's a lot of them out there. You can imagine that, you read a label and you see some of these things on there and you just don't realize how much sugar actually is in that product that you're eating. And then it's in the next one, and it's in the next one, and it's in the next one. And then you put a little bit of sugar in your coffee or whatever you do it with, and you go, I don't need that much sugar. But when you start really adding it up, because now you know what these hidden sugars are, and then the flours and the pastas that have been refined and processed, those things convert to sugars. They're not listed as sugar, and they're not going to show up as sugar in any kind of tracker, but you have to realize that's what they're doing in your body. They're creating a huge, huge insulin response. So that's the point behind this here, is that there's a lot of stuff hidden that you don't know. And that's here they are. So pizza, the buns on your burgers and your hot dogs, chips, burritos, and things like that. So there's ways around this. It's not just the chocolate, the soda, and the cake, that you see there in the bottom part of the page. It's all that white flour and that white bread. And then the stuff, just even in turkey meat and condiments, have all kinds of sugar, high fructose corn syrup in them. So it's a biggie. There's a lot of it out there, and you'd be really surprised. So we need to really get that under control for you. And that's what this slide's about. So sugar equals insulin, which equals fat storage. All these things cause the pancreas to excrete insulin, and then insulin is the fat storage hormone, and it also doesn't allow fat out of the cells. So even if you were, a fat burning machine, if you had insulin around for some other reason, if you injected it, or if you eat that high fatty or that high carb meal, even though you're burning fat and you taught your body to do that, just because insulin's around, it's not going to let things out of your fat stores. So athletes, endurance athletes, I was one of them. I did it forever. We go out and we do all this long distance, training, especially for the long distance endurance stuff. We're trying to teach our bodies to run more efficiently, which is run off of fat. And we go do this stuff, but if we're eating the sugar gels and the white, I used to train with one of the best female Ironman distance athletes in the United States. She was our number one female for many, many years. And we went out and we'd eat peanut butter crackers and Pop-Tarts. We'd stop at the convenience stores, the little gas stations, the quickie marts on our 100-mile bike rides, and that's what we would get. And I'd go get distilled water so I'd make sure I had clean water. But I didn't realize what I was doing to myself with the sugar. There was no way that I was going to be burning any kind of fat or burning any fat out of my fat cells with all that sugar that I was putting into my body. So how do we control insulin? Well, there's one very effective way, and that is with ketones. So what ketones do is ketones drop insulin. It's part of what they do, which means that you're going to start burning fat. So if you limit your carbs, you're going to burn fat because your body has to. And if you have ketones being produced because you're breaking down fat into ketones, that's going to help drop your insulin, which is going to keep your fat, which is going to allow your body to pull the fat out of the fat cells and use it for energy along the way. So it's kind of a double bang for it. So carbs are broken down into glucose, and that's burned for energy. Fat can be broken down into ketones and burned for energy through virtually the same process in your cells. Ketones are the preferred energy source for your brain and your heart, so those are good things. That's where the ketogenic diet is showing a ton of promise for Alzheimer's and heart disease, and it was part of the epilepsy foundations. It is to this day, but it started back in the 1920s, where it's very effective for children seizures and some forms of seizures from epilepsy. And if you get a chance, go to the Charlie Foundation. And Charlie is was a little boy. I think he's probably in his mid 30s to 40 now. But when he's the son of J.J. Abrams, the movie producer, and he had epilepsy and he had seizures as a child, and they got him on the ketogenic diet, and he completely reversed it, and he hasn't had a seizure since he did this back when he was 8, 9, 10 years old. And after on the diet for 6 or 7 months, he has, as an adult now, for the last 25 years or however old he is now. I think when I first learned of this, he was 28. That's 7 or 8 years ago. So I think he's in his mid 30s, but he hasn't evidently had a seizure since. So it's a very, very effective way for epilepsy treatment and other things. So ketones are a cleaner burning fuel, basically. They're less inflammatory, and that's why they're so effective and so health beneficial. But here's some more. You guys can just pick through this slide and look at it, but there's a bunch of there's all kinds of benefits for it. This was just kind of a cool slide. It shows some things. One of the things that it does show is that cancer, it's really effective with cancer as an adjunct to what you're doing. Maybe if you decide it's your only approach, then that's what you decide. But if you know somebody, or if you ever get diagnosed, this is something that it's kind of a no-brainer to do along with the chemo or the radiation, because cancer loves sugar, loves glucose. We know that, and cancer cannot use ketones. Or maybe they can, but not very much. I don't want to say that they absolutely can't, but they really can't. So you can kind of starve them out, and that's what a lot of the science is showing. So diabetes, again, drives insulin down, which allows your fat cells to be used as energy. So here's an interesting slide. This is because you guys are hearing all these words. You're hearing ketogenic, you're hearing paleo, you're hearing primal, and things. So you can see here, you got the paleo, and it's mostly excluding Neolithic foods, including nutrient-dense paleo foods. So the Neolithic is just like caveman type stuff. So it's going to be, if you don't find it, if it's in a bag, a box, or a can, then they're not eating it. There's some goofy restrictions, like they don't use dairy or something, but some of those are added in here where they overlap. But the paleo guys are Lauren Cordain and Rob Wolf. Again, maybe some names that you've seen. Rob Wolf has kind of modified his a little bit, that tubers and fruits and roots are okay. Then you get into the primal. It's very similar. These are all very similar. Mark Sisson, and he's come over to the keto side quite a bit. He's been playing around with keto. He's been endorsing it. He's doing a lot of stuff with keto, adding the fats and coming down a little bit lower in carbs. And then the ketogenic world over here, where you're mostly restricting carbs. And again, with this course, what we're going to do is, you're going to, typically what I do with a client, because most people, the vast majority, are eating extremely high levels of carbohydrates. So they're up in that 70 to 80% range of their calories are from carbohydrates. And it's because they don't realize that, because they don't realize where all the sugar's coming from in the hidden foods and things like that, and the flours and the pastas and stuff. But with those people, I try and get them to at least get their carbohydrates under control. Just by cleaning them up, they get them well under control, which is going to help their insulin a ton. And then get them down to that 40%. Get them down to 40% carbs or something. Let them settle in there for 4, 5, 6 months, depending on their motivation level. If they're ready to run, we'll run. If they're not, we'll just keep walking and taking small steps. and then get the fat up to 30 and the protein maybe up to 30. So you got like that 30, 30, 40, which is typical, Barry Sears, the zone stuff. So that's pretty typical. It's what we did as athletes and things, but again, all good foods. Then I push them to increase the fats to 40 and bring the carbs down to about 30%. And if they're seeing that work and they like it, then I encourage them to even push the carbs down even lower. Keto, you're going to go really low, and you need to go real low to get your body to kick over and use the other pathway. So you got to really restrict, and you don't have to do it forever, and you don't have to do it necessarily all that long to start seeing effects. I mean, you can see, we'll talk about how you know if you're in ketosis or not in the second class, but you can do that fairly easy. And then over time, when you get 6 months, a year into it, what you're doing is you want to find out what your carbohydrate tolerance is. So you really restrict to get yourself burning fat, and then you start bringing carbs back in to see where you stop burning fat, and then that's your carb tolerance. Now you know where your limit is, so then you can manage it much better, and you can live with it much better, and you can cycle in and out. So you're gonna, what can happen is that, and this is what I do, I'm keto, I'm always producing ketones. Am I way out here, so to say, in the bottom left of the keto part where I'm really strict and I'm just keto full on, or am I over in here where, in the fall or the spring where I'm going to enjoy some of the more starchy foods because they're around? I cycle in and out. I don't necessarily ever come completely out, and I'm paleo or primal or whatever you want to call it. But I do cycle in and out, and you get more flexible as you cycle in and out. So it's not a bad thing to cycle in and out. It's a good thing to also learn how easily you go out and how hard or easily that you can get back in. That's just part of knowing who you are, and then you can live with the diet more. And plus, you can, by cycling in and out, is a way to enjoy some of those carbs that you don't normally get to eat all the time. If you're sick and you want to do this therapeutically, and you want to really hardcore restrict like you would do in the beginning, that's a different story. So, and that's and you would more than likely want to do that to make sure that you get all those benefits all the time for your disease. So here are some of the, we've beat on insulin resistance and diabetes, heart disease, autism, neurological disorders, mitochondrial support. So you guys, if you remember the mitochondria, we're going to get into that here in just a second. Aging is slowed down, which is a biggie. I mean, we're all, sooner or later, you're going to start worrying about how old you are if you're not already. I'm 52, and I don't want to age any faster than I have to. And I want to get to the finish line very functionally, and my health span and lifespan are the same. So that means no diseases until I die. Lance Armstrong, his health span ended at 28, and his lifespan is still going. So you can't go back once you get those things. So health span, lifespan, I want them to be well out into the 90 years, the same. So how does ketosis work? So again, here's what we're doing. Most people do, because they're carb burners. Your glucose, you eat the carbohydrates, you're eating the breads, the pastas, your glucose levels rise, your pancreas secretes insulin, insulin gets shuttled, or the glucose, because of the insulin shuttles glucose into the cells, and you produce energy. What we want to do is virtually the same thing, but you're going to do it with fats. We're going to eat the fats, you eat your avocado, you go through a couple steps, and you drive, you create ketones, and then inside the cell, you use the ketones for energy. They're less inflammatory. There's like 8 or 11 steps for carbohydrates to be broken down in the mitochondria versus about 3 for the ketones. That's part of why they're just less. They're less demanding. There's less going on, so it's just better for you. They're less inflammatory, and inflammation's a biggie, which I'm sure you guys are hearing with heart disease and just overall general health. So the standard American diet, this is again just harping on the hidden sugars. You can see it. You can see the breads. You can see all the processed foods, even lunch meats and things like that. They have sugar and high fructose corn syrup in them. So we want to carbs again. We want good carbs, but most people are eating about 80%, 70, 80%, at least 60 probably on crummy carbs. We're fine, and it's very, very inflammatory. And most of this stuff, they convert to sugar in your body and create those problems. So what is a ketogenic diet typically? What is it going to look like? Now, this is all going to vary from person to person. You can pretty much, you can make a pretty good, judgment on if you're in ketosis or not by how you're feeling. Now, there's certain characteristics that you'll know if you're in or if you're not, but you can also test. You can test through your breath, because there's 3 types of ketones that you produce. And so you can have one that comes out in your breath, and you can test that way. You can test in your blood, and you can also test in your urine. And we'll get into those in the next class. But if you're just going to set off and do this, you can see that, okay, so fat is going to be about 70-75%. Again, good fat, organic, grass-fed, eggs, nut butters, olive oils. Be careful with olive oil. Bragg's is a really good company. If anybody else has talked to an olive company and you know what they do and it is good, then let us know. But that's one of the few that I know. Not to say that it's the only one, but olive oil is getting hit really hard, because there's a lot of people out there that are just they're lying about what it is, and it's not olive oil. It's whatever. It's corn oils. It's different types of oils. I've heard, and this was coming from the Dr. Oz show a few years ago, that they even found some olive oils that were actually motor oil. So, that just, hopefully that's not happening anywhere here in the States, but who knows? So you're getting about 70-75% fat. Then you're going to have 15 to 20% is going to be protein. So your fishes, your meats, your chicken, stuff like that. And then 5 to 10% of carbs. So again, what a ketogenic diet is carbs to your carbohydrate tolerance level, moderate protein, and fat to satiety, or fat until you're full. So you're going to do carbs until your carb tolerance level. And we touched on that, where you're going to restrict them, really restrict them, get your body burning fats, get the carb pathway, shut down for the most part, get through your body through that transition. And then you can start bringing them back in, and you can see when you come out, and then you know where your level is, where your carbohydrate tolerance level is. That's if you want to, Nat's acid and find out. It's really a good way to do it. You might find that you can be at 75 or 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, and you don't have to be down around, 20, 30, or 40. So on the grams thing, therapeutically, if you had cancer or something and you wanted to use ketosis really strict in the Atkins initiation phase, when he did this, it was 20 grams of carbohydrates. That's virtually nothing. And that's not a bad thing to do. Do you necessarily have to do it all the time? No, I think it's more a therapeutic. If you're sick and you want to use it that way, then that's where you want to be. I'm perfectly fine. I'm happy below 50. I would recommend that to you guys. Go about 40 to 50 grams of carbs, and you should get into ketosis. You might not get real strong. And again, we'll talk on that in class 2, what real strong is, real high levels and things. But you will be in, more than likely, you will be in you'll be in ketosis, and then we'll talk about keto adaptation too. So, and then you start adding them in, and you might find out that 75 grams might be good, 100 grams might be okay, and you're still in, and you're getting the benefits from it. So, but we'll talk more on that as we go. So one of the best things that you can do for your diet and any kind of dietary plan that you're gonna embark on is to track your food. Chronometer is really good. It's just chronometer.com. It's free online, and then they have apps, and the apps are like $3, I think. And then you can upgrade the apps and the online, and you can upgrade to a gold subscriber, and you can have more functionality and things with it. But the nice thing about it is that it has chronometer settings in it. So I put in one of your emails about this, and then the video that Spencer made on it. So I actually work, as a disclaimer, I'm not making any money from you guys on this anyways, but I work for Chronometer. I just happen to work for them as a nutritionist. I help them develop it. I help them develop their professional versions and things like that. So it's the best one that I've seen out there. They're really doing it nice. So it's really a good night. And the keto settings are awesome. So you can go in there and you can just click that you want to do keto, and then you can select the gram level that you want and things, and it steps you through it, kind of no-brains it with you. So it's really nice to use. Okay, so side effects of keto. So you're going to shift your metabolism from glucose to fat burning. Can be a bit bumpy. You can have headaches. You can be lack of energy, heart palpitations. That's something that I get that's probably not all that common, but it's just something that I get. So I put the slide in there for you guys. And then you get bad breath. You're gonna read about some of these things. So I want you guys to know these things, but they're all short term. They're just a rite of passage, so to say, that you have to go through. But with this course, I'm going to teach you things, and that's what we're going to roll into here, is how to head off these side effects so that they're not bad for you. And it is easy to do, and you can avoid a lot of these, or at least minimize them. So what they call this is the keto flu. So you get that headachy, tired, don't feel good feeling. You can get cramps, heart palpitations, bad. I had one girl who actually came down with a skin rash, and that was from the acetone being coming through her skin, and from sweating and things, and she had a rash, and it just took a little bit to tweaking her diet a little bit, and then just backing off, and she hit it pretty hard, and she had that happen. So you might have something like that happen, but again, there's ways around it, and we're going to hit on those right here. And one of the biggest things that you're going to need to do as you do this is that you're going to need more salt or sodium. So what's going to happen is that your kidneys are actually going to start working correctly, and they're going to start dumping water. So a lot of that initial weight loss is going to be water weight, which is a good thing because it's water that you're retaining. It's not water that you're supposed to be carrying around, and you carry it around and you have that bloated, puffy feeling and stuff is because you're retaining water, because your kidneys aren't working properly. So when you do this, we're not going to get into why it all happens, but you're going to start getting rid of water, and with the water goes your minerals. So you use your salt, your magnesium, your potassium, and things like that. So you want to make sure you're getting it back in you. You want to replenish it. So you want to stay ahead of it. So this will help the keto flu, the cramps, the cravings, will be minimal or non-existent if you just stay ahead of it. So you can use a Himalayan salt. The only thing with Himalayan salt is that it doesn't have iodine, or you can use a Celtic sea salt, and Celtic is the brand. That's got iodine in it, so it's got 78 other minerals. They both do. Real salt you can get just about everywhere. Celtic and Himalayan you can get everywhere too now for the most part. But I've used Himalaya. I think is the brand. It's Himalaya. It's like in a brown paper bag looking like a cardboard box looking logo and container that it's in the box that it's in for the Himalaya. And then the Celtic sea salt is the brand. It's got a guy on a boat in a yellow raincoat, I think. And then real salt is real. It's just called real salt. So those are all pretty good if you can't find them, but I'd go for the Celtic over anything else. Carry it with you. Use it liberally. Salting to taste is usually not enough, so you need to make sure you're getting more. You can put about half a tablespoon of salt in water and drink it, or you can have a couple cups of broth. So if you like mineral broths, hence that's what the picture is there for. But you're going to need about 2 to 3 grams of extra salt when you're restricting below 50 grams of carbs. So if you're not on a diuretic or under a doc's prescription for high blood pressure or fluid retention, you should be okay. You're going to be fine. But it's something to concern if you are. But sodium bicarbonate you can also do. So you can just take baking soda to get your 2 to 3 grams a day in. It's a little bit nasty to do, but just mix it in some water and chuck it down, and it'll really go a long ways. Bone broth is probably the easiest way. So get some good bone broth and with the sodium in it, and put some more salt in it if you like it that salty. So and just do it a couple times a day. That'll help a ton. So potassium, another mineral that you're gonna lose. So you got avocados, you got beetroot leaves, you got Swiss chard, spinach, paprika, salmon, halibut, tuna, cacao. I got pictured there, and herbs. Herbs have a ton of it. So just start putting oregano, parsley, cilantro. Start putting that. I buy parsley, cilantro, and I guess just those two. I buy bunches of those. They're like $1 or something like that at my store, and I just kind of blend them up and chop them, and I just throw them in everything. Virtually, my eggs in the morning, everything that I cook or salads, and I just throw it in there. So I get it. It's kind of a no-brainer. It all tastes good anyways. So, but the RDA for potassium is 4,700 milligrams, so about 5,000 milligrams or 5 grams. So for you to get that, 1 cup of cubed avocados is about 727. Beetroot leaves, 1 cup is about 1,200 milligrams. Swiss chard, 1 cup is about 900 milligrams. Spinach, 1 cup is, 800 plus milligrams. So if you have an avocado with some Swiss chard, spinach, and beetroot leaves, or you just use the Swiss chard and spinach, which will be easier to get, you're gonna be pushing, 3,000-4,000 milligrams. Then have a piece of salmon, you're gonna be getting that RDA of of almost 4 to 5,000 milligrams of potassium. So it's easy to get. You just have to know where it's at, and then you can get potassium tablets and supplement also. So all these things you can supplement with. So, and then the other one is magnesium. So again, spinach, Swiss chard are really, really high. So cashews, flax. So something with flax. So for flax, for you to get the oils out of them, you need to grind them. You need to break those seeds open, because if you don't, we'll just pass them through. They're like corn. We won't break them down. So you won't get any of the benefits of the oils out of them, and I would assume that you're probably not getting much of the magnesium either. So grind them. So buy a separate little coffee grinder, and you can use flax. So pumpkin seeds are another, tons and tons of magnesium in those. And then supplements also for magnesium. Be careful with magnesium oxide. It's not to be careful with it. It's just not worth buying. It's not very bioavailable, and it can upset your stomach also. So you want like magnesium citrate and things like that are good, and you should be fine with those. And I'll link to these again in the class notes. I sell Douglas Labs and Pure Encapsulations. I can get you guys 15% off. They're a good company. They make good, clean supplements. They don't use caustic chemicals and things like that. They source from good places. So pretty good place. Again, there's so many supplement companies out there. You got to be careful with where you're getting them. So, and then with magnesium too, you can get transdermal. So you can just get the gel and you can rub it on you. And Epsom salt baths. So awesome. If you're an athlete, regardless, even if you're not, great way to really absorb magnesium and get it in you. So, and it's very important for our heart too. It's one of those. That's why you probably hear a lot about magnesium programs and the Magnesium Miracle, the book, and things like that. There's a lot of Americans and people in general are very low in magnesium, and it's very key to our health. Okay, so this is the Ketogenic Cookbook. This is Maria Emmerich. This picture of the cover for you guys, so you can find it. I would recommend getting something. I sent you guys the cookbook that my wife and I, Jean, are kind of just throwing together. It's just things that we use, recipes that we found that we've liked, and we threw them in there. But this is a really good resource. Maria's got her stuff dialed in. She's a keto goddess, so to say. But she uses this with her kids and her family very effectively. She's got a bunch of books. This one was new probably about 2 years ago, maybe. But it's got 50, 60 pages in general information about the ketogenic diet, things like that, and about food in general, where you get what pieces of cuts of meat, where they come from, and stuff like that. So it's a really good resource. And there's things in there on to help you with your pantry. There's stuff in there on quick recipes to get you started with that aren't real complicated, and then things for special diets. And she just came out with a book too that's the ketogenic diet or ketogenic cooking, dairy free. So if you have problems there, it might be something worthwhile. Really good book. I would go to Amazon or something and snag it. I like it. She's got a really good chart in there where she shows on the left column what the typical food is, and then in the middle is a better step, and then on the right-hand side is one of her recipes on how to make it. And most of the stuff is easy. Like mayonnaise, for example. You can have Hellmann's, and then the middle one, a better step would be maybe the paleo mayo. Something like that. Maybe it's made with olive oil and things like that. And then the right-hand column will be her recipes for mayo, which are outstanding, by the way. So, and they're so easy to make. Piece of cake. They last about a week. Just don't make a ton of it and use it. And you'll use it like crazy. You need the fat anyways. So here's a list of foods that need to be reduced or eliminated in a ketogenic diet. So we've been hitting on all these things. So sugary foods, so your sodas, your fruit juices, grains or starches, wheat-based products, gluten, not a great thing for humans, so it's not a bad thing to be getting out of your diet, regardless if you think you have a problem with it or not. We're not ruminants, we're not cows and goats and things like that. So fruit, berries and things are good. Blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, those are pretty appropriate. You just can't go bonkers with them, but you can eat them and you'll be fine with them. Use Chronometer. That will help you a lot with learning how many grams of carbs are in things. So you'll see that, how much of those you can eat. Beans or legumes, you got to be careful with. Also, a lot, the very starchy, your root vegetables, your potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots. And again, it's not that you cannot ever have these things again. You cycle out, you can have these things. Your carb tolerance, you figure out what it is, you can have some of these things. You'll see that you can eat these things. You just can't eat them every day consistently over and over and over and over again. So, and you're going to have to just bite the bullet for a little bit, at least for 5, 6, 8 weeks, or maybe 3 or 4 months, and really get your body converted over and adapted, and then come back to some of this stuff if you want. But I'll let you guys read through that. The bottom line is avoid carb-based foods like grain, sugars, legumes, rice, potatoes, candy, juice, and even most fruits. So here's the majority of things where your food will come from. So meat, your fatty fishes, your eggs, butter and cream. So get that organic butter and cream. Something on cream, and because I'm seeing it with heavy whipping cream and things now, is that everything's pasteurized and homogenized as far as dairy goes. If you live in a state or you live somewhere where you can actually get raw milk, here in Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, we have to go up to Back to the Best, and you have to be an employee of the farm. That's the only way they can legally sell it to you. It's probably the best way to go, but it's unrealistic for most people. So you want to at least get organic, full-fat milk, especially for your kids, for their brain development. But it's going to be homogenized, and it's going to be pasteurized, or it's going to be pasteurized for sure. And now you're starting to see ultra pasteurized, which is even worse. So what they're doing is, when they pasteurize, is they heat the milk, even though they only flash heat it for 2 or 3 seconds or whatever they do, but they get it extremely hot. They kill all the bacteria. They deactivate all the enzymes in it by doing that, good or bad. They kill them all, and then it's almost like the refined flours and grains that when it hits your gut, it just converts to sugar, especially the skim milk and the 2% and things. So worst case, at least get organic whole milk. But I'm seeing in heavy whipping cream that it's going more and more and more towards ultra pasteurization. It's even it's a higher temp, even higher temperatures that they pasteurize with. But it sounds good. It's ultra, it's better. So, it says ultra pasteurized. So if you're getting creams, which you probably will, at least go back and look for the ones that are just pasteurized. It's the lesser of the evils. So then the rest of them there, healthy oils, that's the biggie. You're going to have, olive oils, coconut oil, avocado oil. Eat lots of avocados, and then veggies galore, go nuts. So, green veggies, your tomatoes, onions, peppers, and all leafy stuff are going to be good. You want to get a lot of them, and that's going to help get your minerals in, because again, that's a big piece of why I created this course, is that because I saw what people were doing. Because when I tried to do it, I was right off the bat, because I'm a nutritionist, I was like, I got to really make sure that I'm getting all my minerals and everything in, that I'm not being malnourished doing this. And that's a big problem, is that you can be malnourished on a ketogenic diet, especially if you're not hungry and you don't eat but once a day, which you may not want to do. You might want to do that at times, but you do want to make sure too that you feed, that you get everything in you. So bottom line, base the majority of your diet on foods such as meat, fish, eggs, butter, nuts, healthy oils, avocados, and plenty of low-carb veggies. Okay, so that was good. That was quicker than I thought. So homework. So not really homework, but just some things for you guys to look at that we talked about. Chronometer. Use it. Meet and set your goal. So use the ketogenic setting on there if you want. If you guys know Dr. Mercola, there's a Mercola setting on there. That just lets him, see your data, and that's it. You don't have to do that. If you just use the ketogenic settings, it's the same as the Mercola settings if you sign up for his study. So if you see that, they're both the same thing. Doesn't really matter how you do it. Keep replacing your good fats for carbs. So get the olive oil, the coconut oil. You can get liquid coconut oil. A really good brand is Luana. So it's Lou, and then another word, ANA. So Luana. You can get it at Walmart, and it's $8 for 16 ounces, I think. And it's an MCT. So coconut oil is a triglyceride. So again, triglycerides in your blood that you measure and things like that when you go to your doc and things. But they're also there's long ones and there's medium ones in coconut oil that's solid at room temperature. So that you might have been hearing stuff about MCTs, and that's medium chain triglycerides. So there's 4 or 5 fats in coconut oil. Some of them are long chain. It's just based on the chemistry of it, the particle itself. It's how many carbons make up that structure. So you might have a carbon that's 12 carbons long, and that's considered a long chain fatty acid. But if it's below, I think it's 10. If it's below 10, it's called a medium chain. And the medium chains are the ones that your brain really fires off of. And the one that really is caprylic acid, and that's C8. You don't need to remember all those. Just remember that the medium chain is going to be liquid at room temperature. So if you get a liquid, the Luana liquid coconut oil, I've talked to the company. They cold press it. They don't use any chemicals or anything to produce it and extract it. So that's all good. So you can use that in your coffee, and you can use it on your salads for salad dressing, and put it on whatever. I put it on my poached eggs and my gruel that I make in the morning. I put olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil. I put a couple tablespoons of each with turmeric and oregano, parsley, everything. And whatever extra, if I have tomatoes, onions, garlic, and I throw it all in there and make a big mess of it and eat it. And I get a lot of fat in. So Luana liquid coconut oil, you could cook with it, or you can also just buy the, whatever kind. Not that you buy Luana, you can. Dr. Bronner's is good. You can get the solid coconut oil and cook with that. It's a high temp oil, so you won't ruin it. We'll get more into that as we go. So it's a good oil, and butter is a good oil to cook in. Avocado or olive oil, be careful with. Avocado oil you can cook with. Olive oil, be careful with it. You can ruin it and denature it, and then it's no different than the bad stuff I'm talking about. So I don't cook with olive oil whatsoever. I just don't do it. Even though you can keep it to a low fry, I just wouldn't mess with it. So anyway, so the liquid coconut oil by Luana is drastically cheaper than other MCT oils that you're going to see out there. Some of this stuff can be upwards of, twice to 3 times as much as the Luana. So easy way, go get it at Walmart for $8. Don't pay $24 for the bulletproof version. It's almost the same thing. Bulletproof stuff's 99.9% MCT. Whereas the Luana's about 87% or 84. I can't remember which one, but it's way up there. So it's a good alternative. And then on that note too, with avocados, so you don't need to get organic avocados. So go to Aldi, go to Walmart, get your avocados, buy some that are ready to go, and then buy some that are green, rock hard green, the kind that'll knock you out if you get hit in the head with them. Get those, and you can put them in your fridge. So if you see them on sale and things like that, buy 30 of them, put them in your fridge, put them in a bag, a plastic bag. When you put them out on your counter to ripen them up, they'll ripen up faster that way. So you can just rotate. You can rotate your supply of avocados. But don't pay $3 an avocado. That's ridiculous. I wouldn't pay more than $1.50. And I would seriously be consistently paying no more than $1 for them. So, all right, return your liability forms to me. So here's a quote from Tim Ferriss from Tools of Titans. I just like it. I think it applies to a bunch of stuff, and it applies here. So show up, do the work, and go home. Accept that quality long-term results require quality long-term focus. No emotion, no drama, no beating yourself up over small bumps in the road. Throw away the timeline. It takes what it takes. I don't have to add to that. Okay, questions. I would take questions here, but I'm just recording this, and this is not the actual class that I taught because the audio didn't work. So I apologize to all of you for that. So I'm just re-recording it for you guys. So class 2 is becoming a fat burner. What are ketones? A little bit more in depth. The ones, like I said, you produce 3 different types. We'll talk about what those are so you know them, how to measure them, and what the numbers mean, and so you can determine if you're in ketosis or not. And then we'll get into just being in ketosis and if you're actually keto adapted, what those things mean. So thank you again, you guys. Thanks for being here. If you got questions, please email me, text me. If you're here in the States, we do get some people outside of the States, or however you want. Just fire me your questions and I will get you an answer, and hopefully a good answer. But I will do my best to get you the correct answer for you. So all right, take care, you guys, and we'll see you for class 2.